What is up, guys? Welcome back to Frog deck profile number 68. Today we're looking at Frog Monarchs. Now this is a deck that I've been playing a lot on my streams recently, and I think just in general I want to start posting more stream deck profiles if I own the cards in real life, which means that hopefully in the next week or two I'm going to show off my Shino Bird Ritual deck that I've been playing a lot as well. I was playing that before I picked this deck up, but I've been playing this deck on a couple streams and it's a lot of fun. This all basically stemmed from this really stupid combo idea that I thought of, where you summon a Monarch card with a domain on the field, and then you summon a totally awesome, and then you activate Eater of Millions to banish 14 cards out of your extra deck. So now you have a big Monarch, a totally awesome, an Eater of Millions, and the domain is actually online because you just banished everything from your extra deck. Seems like a crazy idea. It goes off every once in a while, but more so this deck is just like a Frog deck that's playing Monarch cards, and that's not that bad. The Monarch cards are actually fairly powerful still, it's just that they're not that consistent, so you need other engines to sort of actually give yourself a win condition. But Erebus is still stupid, Domain is kind of stupid when it resolves, Monarch Stormforth is pretty stupid. The Monarchs have a lot of good cards, they just don't have, they're not at 3 copies per deck anymore. Ether, Monarch Stormforth, and Pantheism are all limited, sadly. Well, it's probably best for the game, but yes, that makes a deck like this a little bit worse, but I think in general, I've been having a lot of fun with this, and I wanted to show it off. So first off, we have 3 copies of Erebus. This is like the go-to Monarch. It's the only 3 of Monarch monster we're playing, and yeah, it's just because it's at 3. But this card's insane. I mean, this card always was insane. It's non-targeting removal. That's always really good. I think one of the things you have to really keep track of when you're playing this deck is that with Pantheism limited and with Monarch Stormforth limited, there's not always a ton, there's not as many Monarch spells and traps in your deck to actually send with these effects, so you really want to make sure that when you use this card, you're getting its value, because you simply can't just like spam infinite Erebus effects because you just don't have enough Monarch spells and traps. We are playing 1 copy of the Ether. This card's obviously insane. Maybe not as insane anymore now that it's at 1 copy per deck, but boy, when you have that 1 copy, does it feel pretty good. 2 copies of Karad's Light Monarch. This card's really important, so it's important because we're really trying to make rank 6s every once in a while. You do that by summoning Ether with a domain and then summoning Karaz. That plays pretty good, so there's a lot of plays where you can, I mean, I think you guys all know this if you play this format, but basically when you have a domain and a Return of the Monarchs and you can summon Ether, you can summon Karaz, you can get a return search, you can pop the return with Karaz, sets you up for a rank 6, and you get a search, and you get a draw. Pretty good stuff, and that's basically what we're doing here. Now, maybe one of my tech choices, just because this is from the pack that Konami gave me for free, and I just wanted to play it in something. I have 1 copy of Caius the Shadow Monarch. I'm basically playing this card in this deck because it's a really good looking ultimate rare, and oh my gosh, it's not ultra rare, and heck no, it's an ultimate rare, that's why we're playing it. And no, it's actually pretty good though. We do play Escalation of the Monarchs, so we do have some ways to tribute some monsters on our opponent's turn, and Erebus is great, but if you don't have 2 tributes, you need something, and I think Caius is a good card to play. You could play Majesty's Fiend in this spot, you could play Vanity's Fiend in this spot, although Vanity's Fiend isn't searchable with Return of the Monarchs, which definitely makes it a lot worse, but I think in general, Caius has been testing just fine. So that's it for the actual Monarch cards. Erebus is like the big player here. The other ones are just kind of the supporting cast, and really where the Monarchs shine is the spells and traps that we'll get to in a second. Anyway though, for the Frogs, we are playing the classic Frog engine. Well, maybe not so much the classic, because when you think of like Frog Monarchs, you might be thinking of Treeborn Frog. With Domain though, and with Prime Monarch and all these other cards that are really good, you don't really need Treeborn Frog. It's actually just too slow. Domain blocks the Treeborn Frog from coming back, and Prime Monarch is just a better version of Treeborn Frog, so we're just going to play the 3 copies of Swap Frog, the 3 copies of Dupe Frog, which always miss timing. This thing does not, it doesn't not miss the timing being tributed for Monarchs, which basically means it does miss timing when you tribute it for a Monarch summon, so you can't tribute the Dupe Frog and search Swap Frog. It's not how it works. That'd be too good. And then 2 copies of Ronin Totem. So just like your standard Frog engine, it's basically just for getting Toad out, and that's all it does, and that's pretty good. But Ronin Totem is pretty good for tribute fodder as well. So part of the combo that I mentioned earlier was the Eater of Millions combo. This card isn't that good outside of that, and if you don't have those specific cards, this card actually suffers a lot in this deck, because what ends up happening is you'll just banish like 5 cards from your extra deck, because you don't really want to banish your entire extra deck unless you know you can stick a domain on the field. So you kind of have to play with Eater Millions a little weird ways sometimes. But this card is perfectly fine at 2, just because you can draw it hopefully when you open that combo, because the combo itself has a lot of 3-ofs, but Eater of Millions isn't really a combo card. It just works in that one combo, unlike a lot of the Frog cards, unlike a lot of Monarch cards, which are good in a lot of situations. So because of that, we're just playing the 2 Eater. And then lastly, 2 copies of Ash Blossom. This card is definitely not necessary for this deck. If you just have like Ghost Ogre, that'll work. I think even Ghost Ogre is kind of pricey though, so if you just have like Effect Failure, it'll probably be fine. But these cards are pretty good. And yeah, so on to the spells. We do still have 3 Tenacity. This card's at 3. That's pretty good. I mean, it lets you search stuff. This card isn't as insane anymore because you can't Pantheism for Tenacity and then Tenacity for Pantheism, but it's still pretty good. And we do have the 3 copies of Return of the Monarchs. A lot of the time, you're just sending this card to the graveyard with the Ether and Erebus effects. However, you usually want to resolve one of these things just to pop it with the Karaz and draw a card and get a search. That's a pretty good play just in general, kind of like I talked about at the beginning. But in general, we just need to have as many Monarch Spawn Trap cards in here that are playable as possible so we can send them with the Erebus and Ether. Because if you can't send any Monarch spells, you can't actually resolve those effects. The other 3 of is Domain. Some people question this because it's not really like a Domain Monarch deck. I mean, you can do like the Wombo combo, but a lot of the times you still need the Domain just to summon a Monarch monster with 1 less tribute by reducing its level to 6, and that comes in handy quite a bit, so I happen to like this card a lot. And then we have the 2 1-ofs, so the Pantheism and Monarch Stormforth. Both these cards are still absolutely insane and super unfair. I don't know why they were printed, so I'm glad they're still at 1, even if it makes Monarch players kind of sad. But yeah, these cards, as someone who played Monarchs when they had these cards at 3 for like the entire format, these cards are so ridiculously unfair in just every way possible. So I'm so glad that they're actually limited. Now for the other cards, we have 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Maybe a little controversial because we do have those like really good 1-of Monarch spells, but you really just want as many cards as possible in this deck. And also like this does kind of combo with the Eater of Millions. So if you like Pot of Desires and then summon an Eater by banishing 14 cards, it's at 2400 attack, which is pretty darn good. So I like Pot of Desires a lot in this deck. And 1 copy Monthly Born, 1 copy of Soul Charge. The Soul Charge is actually used a lot of times to bring back an Ether and an Erebus to make a rank 8 monster. That's a pretty classic play for this deck, and yeah, it's just really good in general. And also, these cards and a card you're going to see in a second, that's my Spicy Tech. Basically, these cards are good for bringing back Toad after you've like used the Domain and you've banished your entire extra deck. So when you have 1 Toad in circulation, you can keep bringing it back with cards like these and cards like the ones I'm going to show you in a second. Onto the traps though. 3 copies of Prime Monarch. Oh, I guess I should mention quickly, I don't really like Foolish Burial Goods in this deck. I know you can send Prime Monarch, I know you can send Pantheism, but in general, I just don't like that card. I'm not a huge fan of it. It just seems like a lot of times, if you already have a Pantheism engrave, it's just terrible. Sending this card isn't like super relevant, so I don't like the card very much. But anyway, 3 Prime Monarch. This card actually, a lot of the times, you do want it on board, and that's maybe surprising to some folks if you've played this deck back when it was at like full power. But Prime Monarch on board right now is really important for the reasons that I've been talking about this whole time, because basically you just don't have enough Monarch spells and traps. You need to keep sending them to the grave for Erebus and Ether. So if you can get one of this card on the board, then you can keep recycling this card, so you can keep drawing it, and yeah, pretty good. So I like that card a lot. And then 1 Escalation of the Monarchs. This card's cool. It wasn't always played back when Monarchs were full power, but I think right now it's good. It also gives me an excuse to play the Caius, so that's pretty cool. And then lastly, the Spicy Tech, the quote-unquote Spicy Tech. We have 2 copies of Exceed Reborn. Yeah, this card is pretty good. It's I wouldn't say it's overpowered, but the idea here is that not only are you summoning a Toad with this card like you would be with Monster Reborn, like you would be with Soul Charge, this actually gives the Toad a material, which is super relevant. So yeah, this card is pretty cool. I actually did test this card in just a normal Frogplay Zoic deck. I actually took a Frogplay Zoic deck to a regional with 1 copy of this card just to see how it worked, and it was okay, but in this deck in particular, because of the interaction with Eater and because of the interaction with Domain, this card Reviving Toad is pretty darn good when it goes off. That is the entire main deck. It's 40 cards. I guess you could fit in Upstart by cutting Ash if you don't have Ash, but you do have Upstart. But it seems to work with the way that it's built. For the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Toad and 1 copy of Sky Cavalry. These are the only rank 2s we play. The other rank 2s just aren't as good. Maybe it's just because I've been playing Scapegoat so much, and what I've realized by playing Scapegoat in Frogs is that I really don't miss any of the rank 2s. Now, we're not playing the Paleozoic rank 2s because we're not playing Paleozoics, and when you take out the Paleozoic rank 2s, all you're left with is Toad and Sky Cavalry, but honestly, those get the job done most of the time anyway. 1 copy of Constellar Pleiades. If you don't remember, Prime Monarch is a level 5 light monster when it hits the field. Pleiades is really strong, so we were playing that card. 1 Gaia Dragon Thunder Charger just to push in damage. 1 Divine Dragon Knight Felgran. I think this card is pretty good. A lot of times, though, you just want to make the number 38 Hope Harbinger. I'm not even going to read that guy's entire name. But yeah, so we played 2 rank 8s there. Rank 8s come up pretty frequently, so I want to play 2 of them. And then, yeah, the rank 6 you're making is Beatrice. So when you do that Ether into Karaz, into drawing cards, blah, 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 you summon the Beatrice, and while this card by itself doesn't do a lot, we're not playing like Farfa, you can send Prime, you can send Pantheism, you can send Rodentoden, and don't forget, when you make Beatrice using level 6 monsters, you actually get to use the effect immediately, which is pretty cool. A lot of people forget about that, but I just remember that from my Chaos Dragon days when I was making Beatrice and like sending Skarms to the graveyard immediately. Pretty crazy stuff. And we are playing the Pilgrim. This card might not seem that good, but it's important that Beatrice floats into something. Yes, your opponent might just play around that effect, but a lot of times they'll seem that you're not playing this card, and then you can just summon it, and then if they kill this, they lose another card, so you can just kind of grind them out of cards that way. So I think that's pretty cool. And that's it for the Seed monsters, and also the 1 fusion monster. For the Link monsters, we have 2 Mistar Boy, because it's like the only thing that's relevant, Proxy Dragon, the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Skulldread. The Skulldread occasionally comes up. The situation that it does is basically when you have Swap Frog, Ronin, Toad, Ether, and Karaz, and for some reason you don't want to make Toad or Beatrice, and you just want to make the Skulldread to draw some cards, potentially unbrick your hand. I think very similar to the FA deck, you will probably not make Skulldread unless you already have a Soul Charge in hand, but in those cases, the Skulldread really, really solidifies those wins, so I just want to play it as a sort of sacky one-of that you probably won't go in most games, but the games you do go in with it, you'll win immediately. Anyway, though, that's pretty much going to be the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I am excited to sort of, I don't know, I'm going to try to profile all things that I play on streams, because I stream a lot, and I try to play crazy stuff every single week. Sometimes they're not as good as this deck. This deck I think is actually pretty good. It's surprised me a lot. I kind of made it as a meme, but then when I was playing it, I was like, hey, the Monarch cards are they're pretty good. Erebus is a pretty stupid card when it resolves, and so this deck's pretty good, and the Sheenobird deck list is pretty good as well. It's also the same deck that I used to face Team Sam in the next round of the Yu-Gi-Tuber Championship. I won't spoil who wins, but that is the deck that I played, just so you guys can look forward to that on Simo's channel. Anyway, though, I will see you guys later. Hopefully you enjoyed the deck profile. Goodbye.